I just wanted to outline and go over some of the steps, some of the things that we have experienced up to this point. So you can do it either way. You can use an agent to find your property, or if you wanted to be like us, if you wanted to just take your time and look on your own, you can do it yourself by looking through Zillow and through Marketplace on Facebook. So we found ours through Zillow, and we went and looked at the property, and we talked with the owners, and then Glenn and I went home, and then we prayed about it, and we talked about it, and then I gave the owners an email and let them know that we were seriously considering the property, and we asked some questions about boundaries or zoning issues, things like that, if there was any issues with easements and those things. And the next day I sent an email with an offer on the property. And by the way, they were selling it by owner as well. They were not using an agent either. So the land was for sale by owner, and we went, looked, and then we made an offer. And so they accepted our offer. There was no back and forth. It was an offer, and it was an acceptance of our price. They didn't counter offer and those things like that. So we went to their house the next day, and we drew up a very simple contract on paper and with the following information. So it was the seller's names, complete names, with their dates of birth and their address, mailing address, and it was the buyer's name, full names with our dates of birth and our mailing address. And then it was a simple contract stating that the buyers agree to pay the specific amount to the sellers for the land located at, and that's where you need to get the deed book and page number and lot number and all that information. So you need to have that, and then you take, after you sign the agreement, so you've agreed on a set price, and then if you pay the sellers any earnest money, you can do that. We didn't pay any earnest money down. We just had a gentleman's agreement, if you will, or a handshake agreement that we're going to buy this property from you for this price, and we're just simply waiting for closing agent to do their thing. And so that's what we agreed on. So we took that copy of that agreement that we both signed, the buyer and seller signed. I took it to a closing agent, and a local closing agent, and they did a title search, and they drew up the paperwork. About 2 weeks later, we showed up at the closing agent's office, and we presented the check to the closing agent. And so there was a few items of closing costs that we had to pay, and then a couple of items of closing costs that the seller had to pay. So we presented a check for the full amount of our closing costs plus the price of the land, and then the closing agent issued a check to the sellers for the amount of the land, and then they deducted any closing costs that the sellers were required to pay from that amount, and the sellers received a net amount on the check. So for example, if the land costs $40,000, I wrote a check, and this is not the exact amount, but I would have written a check for the cost of the land. So say it was $40,000. If our closing costs were $400, I would have written a check for $40,400 to the closing agent, and then the closing agent would have issued a check for $40,000 minus their closing cost. So if their closing costs were $400, they would have received a check for $39,600, and that would have been their net profit from that check. So that's how we purchased the property.